I'm joined right now by Jake Fischer from Bleacher Report. Jake, how's it going?
Hanging in, man. How are you?
I'm doing good. It's a busy time of year for you, especially as you track all the trade rumors across the league. Before we dive into all those rumors, I'm excited to hear what you have to say. I know you just posted something for Bleacher Report with the latest intel, but it would be rude of me not to ask you about your breakfast. It's how we do it over here. So have you had a chance to have breakfast? What fuels the Jake Fischer trade season?
I haven't had a chance yet today, to be honest, but after we hang up, I've got a nice Greek yogurt, strawberry, banana, granola bowl ready to be devoured to fuel the rest of the afternoon. What about yourself?
That's a great question. I don't know. I just got my wife for Christmas got me a new blender, a NutriBullet, and I'm going to give him a shout out. Apparently it's cheap and I love it. So far, I love it. I've been making a lot of smoothies for my kids. I got two young children, and I've actually been eating a lot more healthy just because I'm trying not to be irresponsible when it comes to nourishing my kids. And so it's like they don't like stuff like carrots. Like carrots. But if you blend it up, it just tastes like just a sugary treat. And so I've been doing all these like strawberry, banana, carrot, apple smoothies nonstop. And also, I'm like a simple man. I mean, who doesn't love a delicious, tasty smoothie? And I feel like part of my life, I was like, you know what? One day, I wish I had enough money to eat at Smoothie King every day. Because it's like $5 for a giant smoothie. But guess what? You can make them at your house, and it's so cheap. So yeah, I'm loving life right now. I'm high on smoothies. That's basically how I've been living my life.
There we go. I'm high on trade intel, so let's get it going now.
Oh, what a transition. So I think the biggest news that actually has me confused, just across the league. And part of this is that like my interest in the NBA, someone who watches the NBA every day and been podcasting about it for years, a lot of times I glaze over when it comes to the biggest national stories. I'm not that interested. I'm more interested in like, what are the Hornets going to do? Like that's more interesting to me. But I'm somewhat still confused over the Ben Simmons trade talk. There's conflicting rumors. There's this talk about, the Sixers want to trade for James Harden. Can you just parse down what is actually going on? What are the competing camps saying? And then we can move into the more interesting teams like the Timberwolves and the Blazers and Pelicans and such.
Since I've been talking about this for about 7 months, I will do my best to sum it up in like a minute. So
perfect.
From the get-go, when Ben Simmons' camp brought a trade request to Philadelphia back in July or June or whatever exactly it was, sometime after that Game 7 loss to Atlanta, and between this like the days of the combine in Chicago, Philly didn't have a plan to trade Ben Simmons. Yes, they put him in the deal to try to get James Harden from Houston last January before James got sent to Brooklyn. Depending on who you talk to, and I don't think we'll ever get a straight answer on if Houston actually was entertaining the idea of moving Harden to Philly based off of all the Daryl Morey connections with him leaving the Rockets. The brass tacks is that the Nets offer and the Sixers offer, the Nets offer being what it was, and the Sixers offer being Ben Simmons and Matisse Thybulle and some draft capital. Those were the two best offers that Houston had for James. Ben Simmons was looking around for houses in Houston. Like that context hung over the rest of that season for Ben Simmons. And when, Doc Rivers put him on blast in that post-game press conference, and Joel Embiid didn't exactly come to his defense either. I mean, that really started the fissures, and there's also, other mental health aspects behind the scenes. But throughout then, like Philly has maintained that they haven't necessarily wanted to trade Ben. They've wanted him to be there. They only want to trade him for someone that moves their championship window up and increases their title odds. And it's a very analytical minded front office, right? Like literally they want a piece that their metrics say increase their championship odds. So that's been guys like James Harden and Damian Lillard and Bradley Beal and Jaylen Brown and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, go on down the list from the get-go. What's changed of late has been, as we're getting closer, and Philly had then started talking to teams like Sacramento and Atlanta about the possibility of taking Tobias Harris in return. That's obviously with a clear goal of creating massive cap space to go after a guy like James Harden or Bradley Beal this summer. And I think from my understanding, the reason why this other latest revolution of the wheel of this trade saga has come up of late, with my reporting about James Harden's interest in potentially testing free agency. That's the important context here too. Like, Philly clearly has had James Harden as being one of their top targets all along. And the fact that he is now signaling to people in his orbit, and he obviously has a close relationship with Daryl Morey dating back to their Houston days. He's close to Philly owner Michael Rubin, or he has friends who are close with Michael Rubin. I don't want to speak in totality about the relationship, as I don't know exactly how tight those two guys are, right? But They have some type of relationship. I mean, clearly there's been momentum of late for Philly side of things to expect that Harden would at least be open and has interest in joining them this summer. So that's why it's all coming up now, being that that's the ultimate context in their trade conversations. And Ben is the ultimate linchpin of this deadline if he were be able to be moved here.
So James Harden can opt out this summer and be a free agent. And then Brad Beal can also be a free agent. It seems like that would then provide more motivation or to just Daryl Morey to do anything, maybe, right, just to get rid of those contracts. Like, if he could almost sell, if he takes a step back this year. I mean, I don't know what the calculators say about how much losing Tobias Harris stops your championship odds this season. Because like right now, the further context is Embiid has, I think, 5 straight games where he's had more points than minutes played. Yeah. He's averaging like 4, he's scoring 40 in 33 minutes. It seems like basically every other night. So he's at peak of his powers, possibly the best player in the NBA right now. And so it's a weird situation where, all right, do we just wait for the offseason and see if we can maybe make either a trade or a sign and trade or something with Beal or Harden, or do you try to, again, like if Harden is like, hey, yes, I will sign with you next year, then it becomes, is it better for us to dump Tobias Harris this year? Or do we wait till the offseason and then try to work it out?
Yeah, I think the important context with Joel is that is why they're doing this, right? They're holding out on this big fish, whether it were to be someone like Lillard, who increasingly, I think throughout all this, has seemed to be the least likely of these guys to become available. Like, if I had, based off of, making an educated guess, right? Because these are all people, and everything we're talking about can change based on where we're out here, based off of, just like how Mike Budenholzer was basically going to get fired, and then the Bucks won the title and get the first step, right? Like, there's all these sliding doors elements here. I think Dame is probably the least likely to become available of the James, Jalen, Bradley, Beal cohort that keeps being discussed. But also, like, Embiid, I think in twofold, it seems to be like he's motivated by this situation to, especially after losing MVP to Jokic last year, to establish himself as being this guy that you just referred to him as. I feel like the whole team seems to be motivated to do something special without Ben in the fold. But also, there are people in the league, and I've seen it on Twitter, and fans and our buddies in the media kind of saying, how can you waste this Joel Embiid season? Philly's looking at it as, if we move off of Ben for less than our asking price, we won't waste this season. We'll actually lower his ceiling the next couple of seasons, the whole length of Ben Simmons' contract, because we want to optimize Joel for the next 4 years of his prime, not just this year. That's where they're coming from, and it could be foolish in flash forward 18 months from now, hindsight being 2020, maybe they screwed up and they should have done some type of deal that's on the table right now, right? But from where their standpoint is right now, I can't blame them from that logic, especially being that they're right in the mix and for home court advantage in the Eastern Conference right now. So I think that's also a very important context to the dynamic.
So you're saying we should trust the process?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, sure. Why not? Let's talk about some of these other teams. I think one of the most interesting little tidbits in your Bleacher Report piece today is talking about the Pelicans being involved, possibly about acquiring CJ McCollum. The Pelicans just being involved, period, is interesting to me. I don't know how you describe this season other than bizarre. No Zion Williamson because of the standings in the Western Conference right now, where no one's running away with the play-in. Like, the Trailblazers also, their context of the trade deadline has changed rapidly just because they're in 10th and they didn't really, maybe anticipate being there without Lillard available. So the Pelicans seem to be buyers again. And like, what what's their interest in like going for CJ McCollum, just adding another dynamic scoring guard, or trying to again overcome the Trailblazers and actually make the play in as the 10th? Is like Zion going to come in on a white horse and save them? And then all of a sudden we have like a Zion and CJ Pelicans team come playoffs.
Yeah, the Pelicans have clear designs to get significantly better, and I think they have all along, and I think they've signaled that all along. The postseason has been a clear goal for them from the get-go here. I mean, they're on their third coach of this David Griffin, Zion Williams tenure, Zion Williamson, excuse me. They have mortgaged all these veteran pieces, not mortgaged, I guess, but sold off of Drew and Anthony Davis to collect all this draft capital, and it's brought them really not too much right now, right? So I think we're at a precipice where they're going to be willing to exchange draft capital to go get a guy like CJ, to go get someone. I mean, they poked around on Miles Turner in the past. They have interest in Sabonis too. They need to make a move in order to cement themselves above that Sacramento, Portland, San Antonio muck of teams that are kind of like Minnesota has kind of pushed themselves ahead of that tier. Like if Minnesota and Memphis were at the top of that group and Memphis has made the big leap, like Minnesota even moving to be a consistent 500 team, that's a big accomplishment for where that franchise has been. Like New Orleans hasn't been there. So like, I think the CJ stuff also particularly, I think they were involved with Norman Powell back in free agency this summer too. I've reported that in the past. And obviously they were in line for the Kyle Lowry conversations, and they made a lofty overture for Chris Paul this summer. And they, were in on Spencer Dinwiddie and ultimately came away with Devontae Graham. I still think they have more to be desired by that point guard position. So I think that's all that really is at play for the Pelicans.
I mean, the Pelicans, you feel like Alonzo Ball would be a great fit there at point.
Yeah.
I mean, they traded away Lonzo Ball because they wanted to get Kyle Lowry, and whoops. It's an interesting franchise. I do, on the one hand, I am in favor of these teams with surplus draft capital. I am not opposed to them being like, even if we're having a bad year, if we can get 3 years of CJ McCollum, maybe that helps our franchise, and maybe that prevents us from being like the Celtics where we had all these picks and then they all turned into Romeo Langford, and it's like, maybe we should have traded for something. What kind of return are you under the impression that the Blazers would take for their guys? Because the Blazers are in a weird spot where they could be buyers or sellers. Like, what are they looking to get in a McCollum trade? And then what are their other options? Are they going to hang on to like Nurkic and Covington, or are they going to swap those guys out too?
Yeah. I mean, there's quite literally zero expectation around the NBA from anyone you talk to that the Blazers will stay above the tax by February 11th. But that's the one thing that everyone seems to agree on, right? From there, the Anthony Simons explosion has been something that I think the front office there, dating back to even Neil O'Shea's days, they've been waiting and hoping will happen for years now. It's finally arrived, and it's happening right before his free agency. So again, to go to those tax numbers, like that would seem to make CJ expendable just from that jump, right? Let alone the fact that this is a team that they do have the longest playoff streak in the league, but they've only broken through to the Western Conference Finals once. Dame is where he's at in his career, and the injuries presiding over this season. It would seem to be time to, and the Neil O'Shea departure, it would seem to be time that moving CJ is kind of the big piece that has been looming out there as a possibility from the shake it up that they're, looking to do so. I think Nurkic and Covington, they're all on the chopping block. Those guys seem still very likely to be moved, being that the intel for months now has been that the Blazers have been kind of disenchanted by Nurkic's production of late. I mean, he was awesome in the bubble, if people recall, and he was really looking like a legitimate like big three type of player, like kind of a borderline all-star type of center. He hasn't had the same mobility and the same burst, I think, of late, and the injuries kind of have played a factor in that regard. With Covington, he's not the player that, the Blazers gave 2 first-round picks to get him, right? And I don't think anyone in the league values him as such right now. They might be able to get a first for him, but he's just declined, and he's not the on-ball. He was never the strongest on-ball defender, I think. especially my analytics friends around the league, have always pointed to him as being a stronger help defender than an on-ball defender. And he's kind of been miscast as that stopper in Portland when they need a lot of defensive help, obviously. So just for CJ, I think with all those things in mind, like if they can have a deal that brings back a center that can be a long-term replacement for Nurkic, like they've definitely looked into Miles Turner. And I think that'd be a goal for them. If it's just something that is, turning CJ into multiple players who are multiple rotation pieces that just make them deeper and better and provide them, greater defense on the wings, particularly. I think that's something that's a goal of theirs as well. But also cap relief and salary relief seems to be a main objective here. Also, not just to avoid the tax, but also to create greater flexibility for them moving forward to try to continue to build a championship contender around Damian Lillard.
So Nurkic is the weird one where, he had the awesome bubble run and then wasn't really delivering. And now recently, as this team's been playing a little bit better of note, he's actually just been a monster again, and he's on an expiring deal. And so that creates, you got to do something. Like it's hard when you talk about centers just to find landing spots or teams that might, even want to trade for a center. We obviously have the Pacers talking about maybe moving Miles Turner or Sabonis. Pacers giving up 158 points on Wednesday night. Carlisle had there's a couple of television images of Carlisle on the sideline. He's like, I gave up Luka Doncic for this. One team who, I don't know, who I don't think is mentioned in your piece that I'm curious about is the Hornets. The Hornets they've solidified themselves a little bit above that tight fray in the Eastern Conference. They have a gaping hole at center, but they're also in a weird spot where maybe they don't need to buy because they're so young. But have you heard anything about anything involving the Hornets? Would they be open to moving Gordon Hayward? Are they going to stay pat? Would they swap PJ Washington for more of a traditional center type? Have you heard anything as far as their involvement at the trade deadline?
Yeah, and they've obviously been looking for a big man dating back to the draft. That Mason Plumlee addition they made has been a stopgap all along, right? He was never the long-term solution there. They poked around on Daniel Tice because I think, they've obviously been involved in Miles Turner conversations. I mean, I don't know. I can't speak to Gordon Hayward's availability, but the obvious intel piece connecting the Blazers and not the Blazers, excuse me, the Pacers and the Hornets on the Hayward stuff is, before Hayward went and signed and traded to Charlotte, there was obviously the discussion between him going to Indiana for Miles Turner with Boston, right? The way it's been described to me, and I think it's been reported time and again, that this Danny Ainge just wasn't apparently that big a fan of Miles Turner. So there's clearly been at least some semblance of that type of framework discussed in the past. But the only name I really heard as being the outgoing name in any big Hornets deal has been PJ Washington. That's kind of, as the league continues to become more of a star chasing, high paying, stacking these, $30 million salary guys together to compete for a title. You look at the Lakers and the Bucks and the Nets. I mean, even Philly, if you include Tobias and Ben Simmons in that type of mold. There's become a greater priority to work your roster and your tack sheet on the margins. And that's why I would trade deadline now. Look at, you just mentioned Nurkic coming up, and same thing with PJ Washington. The Hornets are going to have to pay Miles Bridges. And I believe Cody Martin is the twin in Charlotte and Caleb's the one in Miami.
Cody's in, here's how I remember it. Cody's in Charlotte because they had a Cody Zeller. That's how I remember it. I don't know if it helps you, but
that works.
Cody Martin, Cody Zeller, that's the twin in Charlotte.
I'm a twin myself, not identical. So I want to make sure I get them right. I have special empathy for that. But yeah, I think with having to pay, Miles Bridges is going to potentially be the highest paid free agent this summer.
Okay.
Well, he's going to definitely be one of, and Cody's been very valuable to them. It just seems to be that PJ is the one who has seen, he's just, from talking to people around the league, he sounds like the guy that's the most expendable, if you will, for whatever efforts they make to go get a big man. But the last I heard from Charlotte's end is that the prices on Turner and Sabonis and other bigs out there, like Mo Bamba even, I'm not saying he's a necessarily a Hornets target, but the Magic have been asking for a first-round pick for him or Terrence Ross or Gary Harris. I don't know how many teams are lining up to give a first round for Mo Bamba right now. So that's why I think names like Tice and even Tristan Thompson in Sacramento, he's not going to be your answer, but if you can get him for a second-round pick, someone might use him to be just some type of rotational big man to have on your bench. So that's kind of the Charlotte of it all.
Let's talk about a couple there's a little Freudian slip. A couple of teams, including the Kings, who like their seasons are going nowhere, but apparently that they want to do something. So like the Kings are rumored in all these things, like maybe seeing if they can get Ben Simmons or seeing if they can get Miles Turner. What's the plan in Sacramento? Because they're behind several other teams, and I'm also not certain even how, like, if they move Harrison Barnes and Buddy Hield and bringing in Sabonis, I don't think you're going to be better. You're going to be kind of the same, just Kings. Like, what are the Kings thinking, and what's their plan as far as the trade deadline?
Yeah, I mean, the Kings have had pressure to make the postseason pretty much since Vivek Ranadive bought the team in May 2013, right? Not to be a shill, but it's like all over my book, Built to Lose, about
yeah.
the kind of, I want to be careful in the adjective I use here, the curious decision-making that's been, throughout his tenure, in terms of swapping out executives and coaches and players to try to make this combination work. And, Monte McNair's front office has been really patient so far in their process and how they've tried to build something sustainable there. But I mean, yeah, they fired Luke Walton to try to reignite this team and hope that Alvin Gentry's offensive acumen would potentially turbocharge his team and unlock De'Aaron Fox after a slow start. And here they are losing by however many they did, 50 plus, whatever it was against Boston.
Yeah.
So there's just, I mean, they're clearly feeling the pressure to do something, to make some type of move, whether, like you're saying, how good will that make them? I don't think that really matters. I think as long as there is a goal and a theoretical, like obvious calculus why it could make them better, that's what they're looking for. The Buddy stuff has been just, I mean, look at Duncan Robinson now kind of becoming available in Miami, and Davis Bertans in Washington, and even Tim Hardaway to a certain extent in Dallas. Like these high-paid shooters, it's kind of been a trend of late in the league where like teams feel like they got to pay these guys, and then they kind of become like not value deals, pretty like kind of like a new car. The second it's off the lot.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of what the Buddy stuff stems from. He's a good player. He has a great value for that team. He just makes $20+ million to be their fourth guard, basically, if they're really building around this De'Aaron, Tyrese, Davion Mitchell combo. So the Harrison Barnes stuff, I mean, he's been available in conversation dating back to last deadline. It's just a matter of like, will they actually move him? I mean, last year they were kind of looking for 2 first-round picks for him. It seems like the price has kind of dropped. But it seems like they're also trying to use him as like a piece to go buy someone better rather than to sell. So I feel like the Kings are kind of looking to swap pieces out. They're going to probably be sellers, but also try to buy and do certain things. Like they're going to do various different moves, I think.
Yeah, I think the most interesting thing for me when I look at the entire landscape of the league and these trades is all these teams have this like wish list for what they want to trade players for. And then if you go through all the teams and you like just look at the budgets, the trade budgets of every team, no, people aren't getting picks for all these guys. Like I feel like personally I go through there and I'm like Tristan Thompson. Yeah. Buyout. Sorry guys. Someone might trade for Gary Harris or Terrence Ross, but I don't think Terrence Ross and Gary Harris are both getting quote unquote purchased with picks. So like, I feel like the buyout market is going to be huge. So I guess the interesting thing is which teams are going to actually lower their prices? Like is Miles Turner going to be priced to move? Is John Collins going to be priced to move? So like, I guess that's the biggest thing for me going forward. I guess to close up, are there any, like if you had to identify, like these teams are certainly going to blink at the poker table and say like, you know what, we will take this lower offer. Which of the teams that you think are definitely, I mean, we know like Boston has tax issues. We know Portland tax issues, but I guess beyond those, like maybe fringe, trade Covington for a lower salary. Which franchises are going to blink and move some guys maybe for less than what they were hoping for?
To guarantee it is tough, right? I mean,
just your best guess and your reputation. I like to put your reputation on the line. No, just your best guess.
Yeah. I mean, like the stuff we're putting out now is all the preliminary, stuff that these teams are talking about to kind of bring the context forward. And I think from all those conversations, really just, I mean, like I wrote today, I think Portland, Indy, Sacramento, and Atlanta are the teams to really keep an eye on to like go make a splash. Detroit with Jeremy Grant, I mean, that would seem to be, I mean, it seems to be such a vast market. And the people I've talked to close to that situation, I mean, they've definitely alluded to the possibility of Jeremy still sticking around, but I just can't imagine that they won't get a deal that will make them take it. I mean, if the comparison is Aaron Gordon last year, the Magic were pretty successful in drumming up a bidding war between Portland and Minnesota and Denver and Boston, and they ended up getting RJ Hampton and the future first that they wanted. If there's even a bigger market for Jeremy Grant, where you've got like over a dozen teams, Chicago and Utah and the Lakers and Atlanta's come up now and Sacramento's come up now. And there's definitely been talks with Indiana. I don't really know the specifics there, but you go on down the list, New York, Minnesota, like I can't imagine they're not going to get a deal that will ultimately push them to consider it. But I think ultimately also like there's been so many times over the years, like last year with Kyle Lowry, right? The Raptors probably, when he left for Miami, they probably were kicking themselves based off of they could have gotten a higher return for him at the deadline. They just thought they might have gotten a higher return for him in the summer. And even like a smaller potato example. Remember, I forget what year it was, but remember Memphis a couple years back where they were.
I remember Memphis. Yeah.
But remember they were holding Tyreek Evans.
Trying to get Tyreek Evans.
They could have gotten 2 seconds, and they didn't. They were holding on for the first, and he walked in free agency anyway. Like, there's still teams who will be stubborn and they will rest on their laurels and they won't actually make the move. But I think Detroit, Indiana. I mean, whether it's Turner or Karis LeVert, I think one of those two guys is most likely gone. The Rockets will absolutely do something. They're motivated to sell, whether it's Aaron Gordon or Tice or Christian Wood. And the Pelicans, I do expect they'll buy in some capacity, whether it's something with Portland. I mean, Marcus Morris's name kind of has been floated there a bunch. I alluded to that in a story.
Marcus Morris. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, the Clippers are going to do something, I think, to evade the tax as well. That's started to be a conversation point, being that there's no guarantee Paul George and Kawhi Leonard are going to come back this year. So, that's kind of the breakdown, I guess. The best I can give you.
Eric Gordon is my biggest buyer beware. Like him playing the most efficient like ball of his career in that situation on a horrible team. It's like, guys, do not. Like I have Grizzlies fans who are like, oh, I would trade whoever for Eric Gordon. I'm like, no, like I don't want. Eric Gordon is playing calmly and taking like perfect shots, getting his percentages up. Once they get traded, once the deal, I'm like, that's my buyer beware. I did say last thing, but I got to squeeze one more in. It'd be irresponsible. I assume my Grizzlies are not going to do anything. The Grizzlies are, as everyone always says, ahead of schedule yet again. Third best record in the NBA. They have 6 first-round picks in the next 3 seasons. They could be buyers, but I'm guessing from my personal just covering the team, this is not the time for them, and the players out there aren't the ones they're interested in. Like they're not going to trade for Jeremy Grant. They're not going to. I assume Jaylen Brown's not available type things, and I just want to double check. You've heard nothing about the Grizzlies maybe getting involved here at the trade deadline.
I would agree. All the conversations I've had have certainly pointed to the Memphis. I expect from that intel, I think they'll go into the playoffs. They'll evaluate this team in that environment, which they really didn't get to last year, right? Sure, they had the play-in games and they made it to the first round, but that's not the same team, right? Like this is a different entity that now you're taking looks at seeing. You're evaluating through the lens of can this team win a title and not can this team be a plucky playoff upstart. I do expect this based off how patient they've been, and this is what everyone I've talked to who, a great way to find out how certain executives operate is by talking to their friends at other teams, right? And there's just no one I know who knows Zach Kleiman or knows other big actors in the Grizzlies office. And then no one I've talked to with Memphis who has given any indication they're going to make a big swing. I mean, they'll take calls for sure. And I'm sure I mean, Dylan Brooks is probably the best player that they would be open to listening to based on, I mean, they were definitely talking about moving him to Indy for number 13 of the draft, right? But I still think that they're going to hold pat here for sure. If they make some small move on the margin, like Kyle Anderson, I wouldn't be surprised. But even that is starting to seem unlikely from the conversations I've had.
Yeah, I mean, they're in a weird spot where like you have Tyus Jones, Kyle Anderson expiring. Everyone else is locked down for years. It feels like, and like one you could see like Kyle Anderson for Robert Covington, that helps out the Blazers in their tax. But also, it's like as a Grizzlies fan, you're like, does that even make the Grizzlies better? Maybe. I'm not sure that they're balancing this year's playoffs with their long-term plans. Yeah. Anyway, Jake, thanks so much for your time and all your intel. We'll look forward to the next Bleacher Report missive that you put out, keeping us up to date on the league. Thanks, man.
Appreciate it, man. Take care.
Hey, thanks, Jake. That was awesome, buddy.
Yeah.
Sorry for going a few minutes long.
You're 1 minute over. You're not too bad. I'll talk to you, man. Have a good rest of your week.
Appreciate
okay?
it. See you, buddy.
See ya.
You doing?
Man, I'm good. Did you get a haircut? You look good.
Yeah, well, I just woke up, so
you should do that more. All right. What do you want to talk about, buddy? You got 10 minutes of content in you?
Dude, yeah. Let's see what happens. I don't know. We can
okay. I was gonna mention
talk about Bismack Biyombo.
Yeah, your sons are good. You got Bismack.
Dude.
I also thought maybe I'd ask you about your Western Conference, who should be the starter in the Western Conference front court. They're going to announce it tonight, the starters.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be a combination of the fan vote, which is 50%, and then it's a player vote and a media vote. So we can discuss who should be the third front court member in the Western Conference. All right,
let's do it.
Here we go. So now it's time for the last drop. I'm joined by my good buddy, Damian Anaya. Damian, how are you, man? You doing all right?
Dude, I'm doing good, man. It's Thursday right now. Suns just got their second against the Jazz in 3 nights.
Well, I mean, you played the Jazz without a lot of the important Jazz players. How's that Trent Forrest matchup treating you?
Yeah, but come on, man. We were down no Ayton, no Campaign, no JaVale McGee.
You don't need Ayton.
Come on.
You have Bismack Biyombo.
Yeah.
How much do we view the accomplishments of DeAndre Ayton through a Chris Paul prism? Because we've now seen what happens. You've been adamant that adding JaVale McGee was a big move. And I was like, you're right. You're absolutely right. Look how good JaVale McGee is. And then JaVale McGee went down and it was like, oh my God, this Jalen Smith guy's incredible. And then he went down and they're like, hey, we've signed Bismack Biyombo. And now Bismack Biyombo is basically Rudy Gobert. So
dude, anyone at the center and power forward position on the Suns is gonna eat up some points and rebounds.
So DeAndre Ayton, is he not a system player?
Well, he is, but I feel like he's putting up way bigger numbers, I think, than either Bismack or JaVale, right? I don't know, man. Now that I'm thinking about it a little more, I'm a little like, when he comes back, are they just like trying to are they trying to work through Ayton? And does that hurt their team,
Well, DeAndre Ayton's probably a guy who he wants touches, He's like, I need to be a scorer.
But I think the success of all these guys, I mean, I think the Jalen success is the most telling of it all, I think.
The Suns have won 8 straight when Ayton doesn't play.
Well, let's compare. Like, is
all right. No, oh my God,
Morant? Is that?
I'm now counting. Hey, we're not talking about Ja Morant all-star starter right now. Just because the Grizzlies are 11-2 when he doesn't play, that doesn't mean anything. Let's. I got to add these up now. That's 8. what do we want? 8 and we're now 9-2, 10-3, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. The Suns are 16-3 when DeAndre Ayton doesn't play. That's a really good record, Damian.
But that's the thing, man. I think it's up to Ayton how good that front court is. Like if he's cool with filling that same role that like JaVale, Bismack, Jalen Smith, they're all just happy to be on the court, right? They're all just like, dude, if I get some rebounds and like, some putbacks, get 12 points here and there, I'm good. I think Ayton's different where he's like, give me the ball, I can dominate. And I think he can, but I don't know, man. I'm just happy Bismack's getting some.
So one of the stories about the Suns is that they did not come to an agreement on this extension for DeAndre Ayton.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if I'm Robert Sarver.
Well, you're just like rolling with JaVale and these.
Well, I was going to say, no, if I'm Robert Sarver, I'm going to be having bum fights on my yacht. If I'm Robert Sarver, I'm going to say, well, I'm saying JaVale's been pretty good. And Jalen Smith we thought was just a player we don't even need. We declined his third.
So are you saying Ayton's expendable at this point?
I don't know. I'm just, I am right now role playing as someone negotiating against DeAndre Ayton's agent. Listen, the Suns with DeAndre Ayton, 22-6, which is also incredible.
That's also great. Yeah.
You guys must have a good record.
Here's what I think. How many? Here's what we should predict is how many complaints do you think DeAndre Ayton is going to call into their new internal hotline that goes straight to Robert Sarver?
That's incredible. Yeah, it goes right to a fax machine that is feeding into a paper shredder.
Transcript of what they're saying.
Yeah. Should Bismack Biyombo get any consideration for the final front court spot in the Western Conference All-Star game?
I think if you just look at the straight up numbers, what he's put up in 10 games, I mean, look at this, 67% from the floor.
That's good. Efficient.
Dude, efficient. And the name alone, I mean, come on, how can you not put a guy named Bismack on there? 11 points.
And modest.
I say put him in, man.
I'd say put him in. So the All-Star starters are going to be announced this evening.
Right.
A lot of them we're pretty sure of. There could be some surprises, but it's going to be interesting who ends up being the front court starter in the Western Conference, because a lot of guys are hurt. So we know that Jokic is getting in. We know that LeBron James is getting in. Beyond that, the vote is probably going to Andrew Wiggins. But when you mix in this player and media vote with the fan vote, I'm not sure who's going to end up making it in the Western Conference. Like, would Paul George make it even though he's not going to play? Like, I guess if that happens, that's like that's the more boring avenue.
Yeah,
because that's a safe thing to do. Like, is it going to be Anthony Davis? Is it going to be Draymond Green?
Well, from a Suns point of view, people are saying Ayton. I mean, could he make it in? Could he sneak in? You don't think so?
He was 10th in the fan vote as of the last time they did this. So that's way too far to overcome. And him not playing and the Suns still winning, I think is going to work against him. I think the media is going to put Gobert highest.
Gobert,
the player vote, Gobert does not normally end up very high in the player vote. So I think when you average that out, I think it might be like either AD or a hurt Paul George. Wiggins is going to be crushed, I assume, from finishing third in the vote, but then not ending up making the All-Star game.
Yeah. Well, God, I just I don't know. Whenever you mention Gobert, I fall asleep.
He's so good, man.
He is good, but he's so boring.
The Jazz
he's not even
so
Tim Duncan
terrible
boring.
when he doesn't play.
Yeah, but he's not even like Tim Duncan was boring, but he was I feel like he was so dominant. that you didn't care. I feel like with Gobert, you're like, I don't care how good this guy is. I just don't want to see him play at all.
Well, you're just saying you need Gobert to win some titles and also host LAN parties on a plane where
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would love to see a Twitch stream of his LAN parties.
Having a StarCraft adventure.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, you're just talking about the front court starters, right? Like who's gonna just make it.
Yeah. I mean, I assume when it comes down to making it, Devin Booker and Chris Paul are making it from the Suns, and then
right.
It is going to be interesting because there are going to be across the league several replacements. No Paul George, no Kevin Durant.
No.
So that's going to be a little bit of a twist. I guess it's possible that there could be an upset and Doncic might pass Morant. I feel like that's the one thing we're looking for on Thursday night is Doncic or Morant the starter in the East. I guess technically the Eastern guards. Like DeRozan's going to make it, but it's possible Trae Young gets the shaft. So
Trae Young,
it's not totally the front court in the East is set with Durant, Giannis, and Embiid, and then LeBron and Jokic are going to make it. So I guess there are a couple things to look forward to tonight. I would put forth Cam Johnson.
Yeah,
I love Cam Johnson. Cam Johnson is like my favorite. He's my favorite son.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite new Suns guys. And I love the fact that he came out of college and people were like absolutely not expecting anything from him.
Yeah. There's that famous,
even his buddies were like, yeah, there's
the famous clip of Kobe White.
Yeah.
And that Kobe White clip is still adorable and it's still like moving, but it's taken a different tenor now that the Bulls would have to attach so many first round picks to trade Kobe White for Cam Johnson. Kobe White being like, the Suns took Cam. Cam went where? He went where? Like he was so excited with how high he got drafted. And now Cam Johnson is such a better NBA player.
Yeah.
Than
Kobe I don't know how much he's got. Like, I don't know how much he's got left on his deal right now.
He's in this is
he might be in the
third year of his rookie deal. So he's got one more.
He's got one more. Yeah. So I'm like, it's going to be interesting, man. I wonder how they're going to be able to keep him.
Why does your owner not like paying luxury tax?
Yeah, exactly, dude. It was like,
yeah,
that's my biggest fear when people come up for, for extensions, like what Robert Sarver is like actually thinking. But
well, I mean, so you're going to pay. You got Booker and Bridges locked down, and then you think you want to pay Ayton, but if you pay Ayton, Bridges, and Booker, is Chris Paul still there? Because then that's 4. Now you're in luxury tax, and then now you essentially can't pay Cam Johnson if you're worried about luxury tax. It sounds like Cam Johnson should be available. It sounds like the Grizzlies should trade for him.
Well, I think back to your Ayton point that you were getting at earlier. Does Robert Sarver look like a genius with what's happening with this team? At the end of the day, does he look like, oh, maybe he sort of saw this thing all along? Like,
oh yeah, no, he's a savant. Yeah, he's he can see the future. Also.
Yeah, that decade of futility was only to acquire the assets to get Chris Paul in the end.
There's a method to his abuse.
Yeah, absolutely.
His toxic workplace culture. There's a method, and it is to understand that when it comes to paying bigs, he'd rather pay a Cam Johnson. If you can only pick one, going forward, Cam Johnson or DeAndre Ayton.
Hey, man, yeah, that's the thing with me is like, I think Cam Johnson would add, this might be hyperbole, but I think he might add more to the team right now than Ayton might.
I think bigs are more fungible. You can replace a big.
He's huge too. The guy's like huge.
Wings that can defend and shoot. That's what everyone wants. That's what you got in Cam Johnson.
Huge arms, man. Like big frame. The guy's
play him. Why don't you just play him at center? Chris Paul.
Here's a question.
Chris Paul's going to get him 20 and 10.
Here's a question, Keith.
Yeah.
Back to the All-Star thing. Do you think the NFL should adopt the All-Star rules to their overtime process?
I don't even know the All-Star.
I was just thinking about that.
Elam ending?
Well, the whole how what's the exact rule is like don't they take the time out of the fourth quarter at a certain amount of time?
I'm going to level with you. I don't know what the NBA All-Star rule is right now. I know.
Well, they played it last year.
They played to a number.
Number.
They added 24 in honor of Kobe.
Yeah, that's what they did.
It's like
last
whatever the
year,
score is
right?
at the end of the third, then we're adding a point. So you're saying NFL games should play to a point total.
They should add this.
What point total would it be?
Thing. Well, you do it by man, I've heard so many different things.
9?
Well, you do it to 8 or something, or like the first team to 8 wins. So if you score a touchdown,
you have the same issue. You have the coin toss, and the Chiefs win the coin toss, and then Travis Kelce scores a touchdown and a 2-point conversion, and then poor Josh Allen never gets the ball. I don't understand how to fix overtime rules. People have called me a cop because I'm a referee defender always, and also because I'm like, the NFL overtime rules are fine. What are you suggesting? The game just keeps going? It can't keep going. The game
just keeps going. Let every player get hurt, or you take a player off of the court. Don't they do that in the hockey? They take a player off of the ice every or maybe that was just something they proposed.
Do a little 4-on-4 every now and then.
Yeah.
Do some basketball power plays.
That just makes me admire the game of basketball more, because there's no perfect. There's nothing more perfect than the basketball overtime rules, which is just an extension of the actual game.
No. They're not perfect.
Right?
I've long maintained they should not be 5 minutes. They should either be 3 or 4, since everything in basketball is divisible by 3 or 4. The 24-second shot clock, the 8-second violation, the 12-minute quarters. Why is it 5? 5 makes no sense. Where did they come up with this 5 number? It doesn't fit anything.
I think why don't they just do overtime is 4 more quarters of 3 minutes.
Oh my God. That's even more insane.
Why not? I mean, man?
People don't think they've solved it, because a lot of people like the Elam ending. They think let's add 7.
Yeah.
Why do we have foul outs? Why don't we just
I don't know, man. Just bring back
every additional foul could just be like a technical foul, or also who cares if a player picks up 10 fouls? Like, why is that?
They should do penalty cups, man. They should do penalty shots in the World Cup. Just do free throws.
Oh, penalty shootout.
Best out of 5. Best out of 5 wins.
Yeah, that's what NFL players should shoot free throws to resolve NFL overtime.
Yeah, find the nearest basketball court and have them all
just roll out a basket, man. Anyway, Damian, I think we've gone long enough. Thanks for stopping in as always. And
dude, thanks for having me, man.
Yeah,
always fun.
I look forward to the Suns eventually losing, but right now they're beating the Jazz, and that works for me. That in my hierarchy
works for everybody. I think that's
my hierarchy
of
needs. That's good for me. So look forward to the next time, bud.
Dude, thanks, man.
All right, buddy. I gotta go. Thanks, man.
See you, dude.
Bye.
I will